Howdy, and welcome to the Mr. Maple Show. I'm Tim Nichols of Mr. Maple. At MrMaple.com, we do over 1,000 varieties of Japanese maples, and we ship directly to your door. Make sure you check us out on MrMaple.com. Today, we're going to be talking about the benefits, the good things, and the bad things about scheduled timers for watering. As spring's right around the corner, and a lot of y'all are just about to be setting up all these watering systems in your garden. So I thought it'd be a great time to talk about scheduled watering systems. I have a love-hate relationship with them. I love them. They're awesome. They can do some awesome things, but I also hate them as well because there's so many things that could go wrong with watering systems. One of the reasons I love scheduled watering systems is you can water large amounts of Japanese maples all across your garden or in your nursery. If you're collecting, you've got tons in containers, it's an easy way to set up a watering system that can water everything, and it sort of aids you in being able to take care of more plants. So what we do here at Mr. Maple, we've got all of our greenhouses are sort of controlled environments, and every greenhouse has a scheduled timer on it where we can control when that water is turned on and how much water that tree actually gets. So there's some great benefits to them. If you're traveling, if you're going out of the town and you can't have somebody come plant sit and come water your Japanese maples, scheduled timers are a great way to make sure that your tree gets watered when you're not able to actually physically be there and water your tree. They also can provide consistent watering. That means each and every day you could have a scheduled watering system water your tree, or every other day. And you can do that when sometimes you may have forgot or be absent-minded and forget about your tree. Your watering timer system can actually remember each and every day. So awesome way to actually promote growth on your Japanese maple. And if you use a consistent watering system with a scheduled timer, you can actually get your tree watered and promote a lot of great growth. I've seen nurseries do in-ground operations where they have everything on a timer system and on drip, and they make their trees grow phenomenally out there in the landscaping garden. I mean, it is outstanding how much growth you can get from consistent watering. But there's a lot of reasons why I hate timers. There's a lot of reasons why I hate timer systems, and one of them is because many who set up the timers have the mentality that once I've got this watering system set up, I can forget about this Japanese maple now. And that is completely the opposite. One of the biggest problems with scheduled watering systems is people may actually be overwatering their Japanese maple. And that can actually lead to phytophthora root rot, can lead to death of your Japanese maple. So you've got to be careful with using timers out there that schedule how much water and when they're watering. So you got to be really careful about that. If you have a newly planted tree out there in the landscape or in a container, you got to pay attention. Now, water changes throughout the season. And if the watering amount that you need to water your tree changes throughout the season and you're not paying attention to that, you could be overwatering your Japanese maple by using your watering system the same as it was at the earlier part of the season. For instance, if it's hot, naturally the tree is going to need more water because it is losing more water and it needs more water to grow. Now, if it's raining, it's going to need less water. And your system is typically set up by a scheduled timer. It doesn't account for the weather. That is something where you're going to have to look and say, hey, I need to turn off my watering system because we've got enough rainfall that, if I'm watering, we may be watering that tree too much. Now, weather can also affect the system itself. And when I say that, in the early spring, we have below freezing temperatures here in Western North Carolina. That means the watering systems that we have here around the nursery can actually freeze and bust. And if they're not freezing and busting and creating a mess all around the area, they can freeze and not water your tree like it needs to be watered in this early time frame. During the early spring, a Japanese maple needs a lot of water because it's getting ready to push a lot of new growth. It's creating all this new growth, and it needs the water to be able to take up the nutrients efficiently to be able to grow out there. And if you've, say, fertilized in the early spring, trying to promote your most growth, but your watering system's messed up and frozen, it could be detrimental, and you could actually burn your tree because it's not getting the adequate amount of water to the fertilizer that it needs. Now, during the summer, Japanese maples need more water because of that heat. That's obvious. And they're getting ready for their second flush of growth. and that means that they're going to need more water as well. During the fall, they may need less water. And during the fall, it could be the case that they need less water because they're shutting down. They're not having as much growth. But then at the same time, some areas and some environments have really dry falls. And if you have a dry fall, you may actually need to water just enough to keep that plant wet and then let it dry out and then get it wet again and then let it dry out. That is critical with the Japanese maple. And that's the reason you got to pay attention to these systems, because you've got to get it wet and you got to let it dry out. If it's not drying out, you could be facing a long-term problem with Phytophthora root rot and kill your Japanese maple in your garden. And you got to remember with these watering systems as well, what can go wrong will go wrong. I can tell you a few things that we've faced. The mechanisms that actually turn the water on, that control the system, they can jam up. The power can go out to them. So if they're controlled by a battery, that can go out. If they're controlled by being plugged up, your plug could go out or your power could go out. And so you've got to pay attention. Is my system watering and is it working correctly? Animals, they're known to go out there and chew on drip lines. And so rodents, rabbits, dogs, they might go out there and just chew on the drip lines and create water flow early and lose pressure to your entire system. So you're going to have to pay attention and say, is my tree getting watered and is it watering consistently? And is it getting watered daily like I have on the schedule? Is it doing exactly what I told it to do? And is that working for my tree? Another thing is dogs and people can go out there and trip on those lines. I know I've tripped on a number of drip lines and knocked like the actual drip out of the container. And it's easy for people to do, or a dog, and that can mess up the watering for your tree as well. But just because you have a watering system set up doesn't mean that it's watering correctly. And that's where it takes paying attention each and every day. You can put a bucket out there or a pan to see if your tree is getting enough water. You can actually see how much water it's actually getting. And then not only can you figure out how much water your tree is getting, the most important thing is how much water does the soil have around your Japanese maple before the next scheduled watering kicks on. So right when that's supposed to have scheduled to be kicked on, go out there. Is your tree dry? Because that's what you want it to be. You don't want that watering system to kick back on until your Japanese maple is dry. If your tree is not getting dry, you may be watering too much. And that's where it takes someone who's paying attention, because this changes all throughout the seasons. It changes from spring, summer, and fall. Weather conditions can change that as well. Environmental conditions definitely change that. So it's different for someone in Western North Carolina and someone in Texas and someone in New York. Very different all around the country. So you have to pay attention to figure out what's working best for your Japanese maples. The key is letting them get wet and letting them dry out. And with a scheduled timer, it can be your friend. It can be an awesome tool to use out there in the landscape and garden. But if you're not paying attention, a lot can go wrong and you could actually kill your Japanese maples. The bottom line is, if you're using a scheduled timer because you don't want to pay attention to your Japanese maple, then maybe a scheduled timer isn't for you. You're going to have to pay attention to your tree, especially if it's a new tree that's recently got put in the ground. It's got to get established to help take care of itself, or if you've got one in a container. So using a scheduled timer can be effective for those who are attentive to your Japanese maples, as long as you're paying attention to the changes that your tree may need. I hope this sort of helped you understand some of the things, the reasons why I love and both hate scheduled timers for watering. They can be an awesome tool to use in your landscape and garden or your nursery. If you really liked this topic, we may go in, dig a little deeper into what scheduled timers we recommend. If that's something that you're into, let us know in the comments. We put out a daily video here on the Mr. Maple Show. Some's about the trees we weekly release on MrMaple.com. We release 20 new trees on Tuesday and Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Mr. Maple. But we also do walkthroughs, cultivar highlights, and gardening questions where we sort of teach you about something about gardening. So if you like that kind of thing, make sure you're subscribed here on the Mr. Maple Show. Like this video, and we'd appreciate if you shared it with your gardening friends. Take care, God bless, and have a great day.